Ever heard of a killer? I drop bombs like Hiroshima.
So I said, look at LeakYou video. What the fuck is LeakYou? Is it like a site? What's LeakYou? LeakYou. Is it a YouTube channel? Oh shit. Oh, I bet. Here we go.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
One, two, three, four.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. I hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday. I'm coming through really quick to talk about a few things that are of interest to the channel as I prep up for a Earth Files broadcast later tonight, as well as a premiere broadcast that Khalil Amani will be doing that I'm looking forward to. Shout out to Khalil Amani, first and foremost. Also, I want to give a special shout out to Twitter, man. It's insane how Twitter has been exploding on me. Crazily enough, I've been pulling more viewers on Twitter than on YouTube. And I mean like number-wise, right? And suddenly yesterday I had a blue check by my name, which was kind of cool. I don't even know how I got it, but man, that's I feel like long overdue. I feel like Instagram should give me a blue check too. I'm not paying for no blue check. Absolutely not. I refuse. I refuse. But that's what Instagram's doing these days. They're, charging people whatever it is that they're charging them. And I think there's a couple of social media companies that are doing that. They realize that they could make money, charging folks. But I definitely want to give a special shout out to those of you on X, formerly known as Twitter. I do appreciate the viewership that I'm getting. You guys definitely keep tuning in. Now, today, I want to talk about a couple of things. First off, AI robots and its application in the industrial military complex, as well as Cern. Is Cern communicating with interdimensional beings? Well, it seems that there are some scientists that says yes, that is going on with Cern currently. Now we know Cern is the large, the large collider. They're bamming particles together, right? They're trying to find the God particle, as they call it, and they're bamming these particles together, for various different experiments, right? But there's so much energy being utilized. People have reported portals showing up over CERN, over the building. There's been even some demonic like celebrations that have been discussed and talked about in the world of Cern, especially when they had like their grand opening. Um, and they deny that. They do deny that, but there's just a lot of weird stuff happening. There was a actual, and I seen the video of this. It was an actual spiral portal that opened up right above the CERN device, I guess I could call it, after they commenced operations again after a brief pause in operations. In the moment that they commenced operations, these anomalous portals start opening up. And if you're familiar with portals, or if you've watched sci-fi, portals are known to some where you can walk into a portal and be somewhere else, either on the planet or even on a different planet, spherical body in our universe instantaneously. I've seen some, and I've showed some very interesting videos on this channel in the past when it comes to portal technology. And one in particular that I can think of is the one of the guy in the woods. If I can find it, I'll show it to you before we head out. But there's one of a man in the woods with two kids. It's like he's showing his boys, maybe what dad does for a living, sort of a thing. And he activates this portal and proceeds to walk through this portal. Now, where he activated the portal, he was in the woods, but in the portal, when he stepped through it, he was on a beach somewhere with two sons. And apparently, from what he said in the video, when these portals are activated and one goes through these portals, they will stay active for up to 2 hours. I would be scared that I would be left behind. That would really scare me. And Emery Smith has talked a lot about this on Cosmic Disclosure. He talked about some of his scientific experiments that he has done where they have had to walk through portals and into places where he did not know necessarily where he was, right? Now, before we dig really deep into this whole interdimensional being, is CERN communicating with interdimensional beings? I think, honestly, it's almost impossible not to. When you're dealing with that much energy and you're opening up portals to the unknown, we know that the unknown is other dimensions. And if you know anything about meditation, right? Meditation, um, the sync effect. Okay. If you do a little research on this, there is a process of meditation that you can employ on yourself where you sync essentially the right and left hemispheres of your brain. They come to sync together, which develops quite a lot of energy, right? And people that have done this have had out of body experiences. And an out of body experience could be, we've heard of people having near death experiences where they go out of body, but I'm talking about someone who's fully alive and laying in their bed who astrally projects. It's called astral projection, or they project outside of their bodies and they can actually look down and see themselves. Now, there's been some very famous people, very well-known people, right? Mr. Mogul's one of those. I think his name is Joseph Mogul. And I may not be saying his last name correctly, but he worked for the CIA for years and he was a remote viewer. And he had this very special ability to find locations of things by astrally projecting out of his body. But the one thing that seems to be a common theme to those that do have these astral projections is interdimensional beings seem to show up. Very scary reptilian interdimensional beings have shown up. Very strange, behavior, right? But this has been documented. And not only has this been documented out there for anybody to look up, this has been documented by the government. Because, see, the government did a 30-year study on this particular technique, consciousness, what consciousness is, okay, that sort of a thing. Let me just 1 second. Because they actually talk about, hold on, give me a sec, guys. I'm trying to find the exact term. Hemisync. Hemisync. That's what it's called. Hemisync. This is a full out of body experience that is done by guided meditation. And when you reach that level of where the right and left hemispheres are in sync, essentially, there's been multiple, and I do mean multiple, reports about those that have been successful in doing this. And this happened during these experiments that were performed by the CIA. Okay, let's be clear about that. But more specifically, there was a man named Robert Monroe. He was born in Wabash, Indiana. He was a radio broadcasting executive, and he became known for his research into altered consciousness. And he founded the Monroe Institute. In 1971, he had a book called Journeys Out of the Body that has been credited with popularizing the term out-of-body experience. Now, Robert Monroe had suffered a series of very bizarre events. At the age of 43, he began feeling a strong vibration deep within his chest. And suddenly, that sensation grew so intense that he was forced to lie down. However, once he reclined, he found himself hovering outside of his body. He, in turn, immediately panicked, thinking he had died, but this crippling fear only returned him to his physical form, and he found himself back in his body. He had similar episodes very soon after, in which he was able to weightlessly float around a room. And I think about the diary of Matilda McElroy when she was having that conversation with that being that had that crash. And that being took her out of her body, where she was hovering, looking down on her physical body. Somehow that being extracted her consciousness without touching her. The mind is like a sea, and there's levels to that sea, and it goes very, very deep, very, very, very deep, right? And meditation really does work. And don't dismiss it until you try it. I'm telling you, don't dismiss it. Now, for 3 decades, Robert Monroe studied out-of-body experiences for the CIA. His primary goal was to gather scientific evidence proving the existence of alternative realities in hopes of making cosmic travel more attainable. He developed a technology called hemispheric synchronization, also known as the Hemisync. This is a system that utilizes audio patterns that contain essentially binaural beats. It creates a harmonization of the brain's left and right hemispheres. Now, independent clinical neurologists conducted extensive testing on participants that engaged in this experimental technique, and to their amazement, The results were clearly visible on every single EEG scan that was conducted. Both sides of the brain simultaneously measured equal in both amplitude and frequency. So, Robert Monroe's work was quite pioneering, to say the least. Now, he was invited in 1978, one day, the Central Intelligence Agency reached out and contacted Mr. Monroe. And high ranking officials invited him to join a highly classified military project where they wanted to implement his mind expanding practice in attempts of sending soldiers into deep remote viewing sessions. And should they have succeeded, right, America would have had an advantage over our enemies, especially our Soviet enemies, right? And the Soviets have practiced remote viewing as well. But troops and those that were performing this testing, they were being catapulted into the past, into the present, and into future timelines. Let's take that in for a second. Their consciousness was catapulted into the past, the present, and into future timelines. It was very clear that somehow, some way, these people that was testing this hemisync process, they were somehow opening up portals to other dimensions. And they named this the gateway process. Now, there's been some files that have since been declassified, right? And in these declassified files, it is described that the program is a, quote, training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space. And by doing this, the participants gain access to a variety of different levels of intuitive knowledge that our universe offers. Now, some of the discoveries that were written in one of the commander's final analysis papers included this: detailed information about the nature of what reality was. Investigators somehow ascertained that we are living in a holographic universe, and waking life is a projected electromagnetic matrix. Experiments opened portals to other dimensions where, get this, reptilian humanoids resided. Now, to enter these unearthly realms, headphone-donning voyagers would sit in isolated darkness while listening to a variety of tones at a specific hertz. Participants had no contact or communication with one another. And after their journey was finished, volunteers would report what they had experienced with staff members. And according to Robert Monroe, subjects would often encounter interdimensional entities. Most frequently witnessed were reptilian humanoids. Some of the participants referred to these very uncanny creatures as, quote, the alligators, due to their crocodilian features. And curiously, Robert Monroe was already quite familiar with these reptilian humanoids during countless expeditions that he did of his own accord. He also observed identical saurian creatures for over 35 years. Robert Monroe gathered insight about these startling beings. And here's a little bit more information. Number one, they're nefarious. Their vertebrates and they have controlled and enslaved humanity for millennia. They exist and operate in the fourth dimension and are only visible to individuals who can see beyond our extremely limited spectrum of visible light. Do you remember those glasses that the CIA had some soldiers trying in Vietnam, the red film, and how they were seeing interdimensional creatures flying at them? And now that was their form of night vision back then. Now night vision's green. But there's a reason why it was switched from red to green. Do a little research on it. The other thing that Robert Monroe discussed or noted in his final analysis papers was that reptilians feed off of our spiritual life force, which he referred to as loosh. That negative and low vibrational energy is essential to their survival. It's essential that they keep people in a negative and low vibrational state. These parasitic entities see Earth as a massive farm where they can harvest human fear, hatred, anxiety, anger, and depression. That their intelligence is equal or superior to human beings. And that this elusive lizard-like race sees itself as superior and as rulers of mankind. Robert Monroe passed away in 1995, and his beliefs never change. And he frequently warned of these sinister spiritual vampires. Gateway's revolutionary experiments continued throughout the 1980s, and hundreds of celestial trips have been successfully completed and logged by the CIA. These documents, however, were not unveiled until 2003, but there was very little public attention following the report's initial release. Some whistleblowers claim that the secretive federal project never ended. More than 40 years have passed since the program's inception, and with modern technological advancements, it's likely the method has evolved in ways far beyond our comprehension. And this is precisely what else insiders ultimately uncovered, which remains one of the greatest mysteries of our time. And I've heard these things so much about how reptilians feed on our fear. And I've heard that term loosh before. Remember the story of Ted Rice and the dinosaur? Where there were several children and adults that were abducted. And they were brought to a type of stadium. And the children were running around in the field where the adults were made to sit in chairs inside this make-ready stadium. They told the children that they were going to see Barney. But when Barney came out, Barney was a full-blown, aggressive dinosaur that was tearing the heads off of some of these children, which caused massive fear and emotions in the crowd of human beings that were there. After this happened, these same human beings that had been abducted and were forced to witness this were taken back, where there was a box of some type put, I don't know if it was on their chest or their neck area or what, but it's like they were sucking that negative energy off of the human beings that it just experienced watching children's bodies get torn limb by limb, which would obviously upset anyone. But for reptilians, this is something that they enjoy, that they collect. And there's also a lot of experimentation in consciousness We've talked about the secret space agency and the ability to put one's consciousness into a variety of different things, cloned bodies, where we've got people that say, hey, I did 20 years in the United States Space Force on Ceres colony or on Mars or on, Calidus 1. And it's not just one person that has come out. I think that the experimentation into consciousness reaches very far and very wide. There's so many things that the United States government continues to hide from us. But the thought that we potentially live in a holographic reality and that our life in the waking state is a projection of an electromagnetic matrix. Could you imagine sitting in a dark room, being isolated by yourself, putting on headphones, listening to these very weird tones and frequencies? And by the way, these participants that ran into these reptilian humanoids, they did not have contact with each other. That was part of the deal with these experiments. And after they would complete these astral journeys, so to speak, and they would talk about their experience, pretty much each one of them encountered creatures from other dimensions. To the crocodile faces, again, referring to them as alligators, alligator humanoids. And again, we know that the creator of this had himself witnessed similar lizard-like creatures during many of his out-of-body adventures. The fear. Now, there was some additional data that Robert Monroe provided about this. He went on to say that these vile lizards have controlled and enslaved humanity for millennia, that they exist and operate only in that fourth dimension, right? And again, that lush, that spiritual life force that they're feeding on. They're like parasites. What if what we think is real isn't real? Reptilians have been known to feed on humans. And Robert Monroe was certain of the presence of their evil energy and that they were predators among us. And even during, you all, their experiments on this Gateway project, they said, like I said, there was hundreds of successful flights to other worlds, which sounds like a fantasy. But I would be mindful to tell anyone, be very careful. You become interested in the Gateway process. Hey, Emmanuel, be very careful with it. Again, because you may not know how to control something, you're not getting any guidance from someone who's been through this. And what if you run into one of these horrible creatures? I've even heard those that have experimented with mushrooms have had instances where they have seen humanoid creatures during their trips. Did any of you have dreams that you were flying as a kid? You know what they say? They say that those that have had those dreams as children, while you were sleeping, you were actually astrally projecting out of your body. That's why you felt like you were flying. And some say that a few hours each night when we're dreaming, we are astrally projecting out of our bodies somehow, some way. So it's very interesting. I used to as well, Emmanuel. I used to as well. Now, we're talking about the fact that interdimensional beings has been a very hot topic, a hot word, a hot phrase ever since David Grush went to Congress and told Congress that the United States government is in possession of craft that are of non-human origin, and that our government has some of the bodies of the pilots. And he referred to these beings not as aliens from other planets, but as interdimensional beings that somehow have the ability to come into our third dimension. And then we've got Cern doing all of these experiments. We've had all these strange creatures popping up all over the world. Every day there's a UFO caught on camera somewhere around the world every day. Peru still having issues with the Pelicaras, okay? Still, it has not stopped. It has only expanded to other villages now, right? So if we don't even know what we're dealing with here, why is CERN opening up these gates and these doors to the unknown, to these entities? And what will these entities do to human beings if they somehow get, through one of these openings that CERN is creating? They are creating and opening up portals. You all, listen to this for a second.
Radionuclear research. But it is more than that, because there are lots of physicians. I had an inch time. Actually, Cern is dealing with radionuclear research. But it is more than that, because there are lots of physicians. I know some. They're doing very strange experimentation. There are beings from portals coming in and out. It's physicists from the Cern who told me this.
They've testified to beings coming in and out of portals.
Yes, they have.
Hold up. Excuse me? Excuse me. Did y'all hear that? I hope you heard that right. There are physicians, doctors, who've been doing experiments at the CERN Large Hadron Collider in which portals are opening up. And we know they're opening portals because of the work that they're doing, right? We know, again, they're taking particles and they're colliding them very fast together. They're trying to find that God particle. But what's happening, all that energy is opening up these portals, and they are having interactions with interdimensional beings. And does that put the world at any risk? Let's hear that again. We've got to hear that again.
They're doing very strange experimentation. There are beings from portals coming in and out. It's physicists from the Cern who told me this.
They've testified to beings coming in and out of portals.
Yes, they have. Apparently, in the bottom of the Cern, this portal, this door, where they are dealing with all the subatomic dimensions. They say there are 17 different dimensions of reality. That's what those physicists say. Some others say there are more dimensions, And now, when you look at what is going on in the Cern, there is a fight from some of the military agencies, Intel. They say that there is a fight on time. They're trying to change time. Actually, Cern is dealing with...
They're trying to change time. Because if they can go back and change time, they may be able to change the future, right? And go in and shift a timeline. And then we all sit around and wonder why we're having the Mandela effect. We're all sitting around wondering, how is it that we all know and grew up watching Shazam, the movie Shazam with Shaquille O'Neal, but yet they say that movie does not exist. I remember that movie. My daughter loved that movie. And some have found VHS tapes. The Berenstain Bears. Right? There's been all sorts of and what we call Mandela effects, where we all seem to remember something But it's as of our reality now, it supposedly did not or did happen, right? And part of that had to do with Nelson Mandela. People thought that, remembered Nelson Mandela being killed. But he walked out of a prison 20 years after. But people remember this. And that's what they refer to as the Mandela effect. And some have speculated that the reason why we have these feelings called, deja vu, aka the Mandela effect, the reason why this happens is because there are people that are fiddling with timelines, somehow going in and trying to modify actual timelines to try to cause a different future. And it's like a family tree. If you would look at a tree and all the branches and roots and leaves that stem out from a tree, similar to how you should look at timelines. There are timelines that go on and on and on and on from the bottom to the top, and there are some that have been abandoned for whatever reason. And again, something to definitely be concerned about. Check this out. Shout out to UFO Mania, by the way.
This collider and these beings that they're in communication with. So we're talking about the premier scientists on planet Earth right now who are actively engaged, according to their own words, communicating with something with a personality, in their own words, from another dimension. And that's the purpose of the collider. I mean, people need to understand this is not science fiction. This is fact.
That's correct. What I write about in my novels,
right?
I place a storyline that is embedded with science fact. Everything that I present publicly in the books, public speaking, is all drawn from their own scientific journals and white papers. And then I'm able to see what they're doing. Not just extrapolate, but see in the real time what it is they're doing. Not a future agenda, but what they're doing right now today. The imminency of what they intend to do, which is opening this gateway. And understand that the world of science in terms of particle physics also overlaps into DNA, into biology.
Yes.
There's a multifaceted, multi-level agenda at play, not just with CERN, but it's proof of concept feeder labs around the world that feed into CERN. So we are talking about changing humans, changing the planet. We're talking about not only bringing in information through a portal, we're also talking about definitively changing our way of life. This is a threat to our existence, to the creation of mankind.
A threat to our existence, a threat to the creation of mankind. So they're communicating with some kind of entity. You and I would believe that these entities are fallen angels.
Right.
I don't think they're angels. All right. I definitely do not think they're angels. Shout out to Khalil Amani in the chat, my YouTube husband. All right. Who's enjoying the live stream over dinner. Again, as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, make sure you've got your notification bells checked, as there may be a premiere coming tonight from Khalil Amani's World. So be on the lookout for that. Hey, what's up with it, Leonard? How you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, they said that Nelson Mandela died like 3 times, right? One of the sayings was that he was killed in prison. And somehow people remember this. Just like there's things that I remember, and then I'll hear and I'm like, no, there's no way. Like the movie Shazam. I remember that movie. I remember that. So does my daughter. But yet, you look it up right now and they say that Shazam was never a movie that was ever made. Then why do we remember it? How? And how are people finding VHS tapes? Because see, I think what happens is when they go in and they fiddle with these timelines, it creates the side effect of trying to modify a timeline for a future event. I believe one of the side effects is that Mandela effect, right? And I don't think it necessarily deletes the physical evidence because, again, people are finding, yes, Shazam was Shaq. So you remember it too. Well, what if I told you that they say that movie did not exist? Uh-huh. Hold on. I'm going to bring it up. I'll bring it up. Let me see if I can find it. It was Mandela effect. Yes. So it was Sinbad's Shazam. It was Sinbad's Shazam. Sorry, I got it mixed up with Shaquille O'Neal, but I think Shaquille O'Neal had Kazam, right? Very similar. And maybe there's something to that, right? Maybe there's something weird about that. But do you all remember this? All right, let me show you this. I remember this. Okay. Sinbad. All right. We've got people that have found portions of the movie with Sinbad, but Sinbad says that this never happened. Sinbad says that this movie never happened. How is it that there is a VHS cassette tape there named Sinbad Shazam that people have found? Again, I don't think that when they go and they fiddle with those timelines, that it gets rid of the actual physical evidence. It only does something really weird and creepy to our minds. But according to the world, okay, according to Hollywood, this movie never existed. Never existed. See? Non-existent movie. Sinbad Shazam. Inside the internet's conspiracy theory about a non-existent movie. Although we've got people even showing up with VHS tapes. But yet, the claim is it does not exist. And even Sinbad himself has said, hey, I didn't make a movie called Shazam. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You did. And some even found a little clip of it online, guys. Look. Some people found the old
What are you
VHS
doing?
tape.
Dad could
How?
have thrown out all of Mom's stuff. He just couldn't have. James, there's got to be something he forgot here. Something real we can remember her by.
And remember, Sinbad was a genie in this movie, right? He was a genie in this movie.
We have our memories. They're real. No one can take that from us.
Yeah. Clean this up. Can you imagine if Dad saw this mess?
Really hooked on them.
Bless you. What is that?
It's a genie in a bottle.
Whoa. What's happening?
Man, it feels good to get out that thing. Oh, kind of cramped up in there. Sure took you long enough, Tina.
Now, how, Sway? We even have people that have found VHS copies, right? And have leaked it on YouTube. But Sinbad even says, I didn't make a movie called Shazam. I didn't make anything called this. I don't know why people believe that I made this movie. Yeah. I don't know, guys. It's scary. It's very scary because there's things that we remember, but they somehow tell us they don't exist. And then things start leaking and finding their way out to the internet, and they don't explain it any further, right? Ain't it crazy, Leonard? It definitely existed. It definitely existed. I know. But even Sinbad did an interview on it. I watched it. It's like, I don't know why people think I did this movie. I never did a movie called this. Ugh. It's crazy. But again, this call, in my opinion, all comes down to consciousness and the fiddling of timelines. Timelines are very, very real, people. They're very real. And you could imagine them again, almost like a family tree. There's timelines that are all over the place. Some have been abandoned, some have been completed, and some are still ongoing. And I think when they have a need or a reason that they want to go back and change something for whatever reason, they do it, but that doesn't mean it takes away what's in our memories or that physical evidence, which is again why there are tapes that are found later on in life. And there's several examples of the Mandela effect. You just search Mandela effect on your favorite search engine. There are many examples of this, including the death of Nelson Mandela himself, right? Which is how this very weird, anomalous, I almost wanted to call it a feeling, but it's really a thing, how it all came to be called the Mandela effect, because everybody remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison, right? So anyway, it's very interesting things like that. So again, if you do play around with the gateway process and you want to meditate and you want to get fully in sync with both hemispheres of your brain, and you want to do astral projection, you need to be careful. You need to make sure you study up before you do your first astral projection session, so to speak. Don't just, do it with no understanding of what you're doing, because you're moving your consciousness into real places, real dimensions that may be quite scary for you. And what if something happens and you can't get back to your physical body? That's a scary thought. But it is an interesting thought, to say the least. And it kind of goes down to these AI robots, right? These robots that are looking quite human, quite realistic, okay? We had some show up at a game recently promoting a movie called The Creator. They were very creepy looking, but they have artificial intelligence within them. And the whole goal is to be able to, have a conversation. They want this robot to have emotions of joy and anger and sadness. It's insane. But here's what really scares me about artificial intelligence: how much it can get away from those that do the programming code for artificial intelligence. Because at the end of the day, all it is lines of code by programmers, right? But think about just this one thing. Building a robot is going to become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. I can absolutely see a real life application of an AI robot being used in war. Our military industrial complex can absolutely see our military putting robots on the front lines in wars, or even having AI robots do the missions that they would typically send like SEAL Team 6 to go and do. That way, we're not losing human lives. Never know. You may see AI robots fighting on the front lines of Ukraine and Russia one day, not humans. And that is something to really think about, because the capability is there. I have seen video upon video upon video of robots being trained to shoot guns and other military hardware. Drive vehicles, shoot guns, jump, all sorts of stuff. Anything you can imagine, they can program. And that's where it gets really scary. And so what if these robots go rogue and start making decisions for themselves? And they say to themselves, well, it's not just, Russia that's the enemy. It's any human being that's the enemy. And then we end up wiping ourselves out. And that's why people take this stuff so serious. And that's why it scares people so much, because you have no control over 100% over everything that a programmer is programming into the algorithm for artificial intelligence. And there will be those that will be one-offs, right? Bad actors that may program something that they shouldn't program, but they do it because they can get away with it. Maybe nobody's checking their work. Maybe they hide it in a hidden folder only to be accessed in certain, times. I mean, y'all, computer programming can get very, very interesting, right? And so with all the talk, interdimensional beings and the Mandela effect, and now we've got robots showing up, driving Ubers up, delivering your food for you, okay? It's getting kind of scary out there. We just need to be very mindful not to shift our everyday lives off onto artificial intelligence. That's all I'm saying. And with that, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming through and chopping it up with me as I discussed these topics with you. We are not alone, people. And if you've not had an opportunity, you should check out Jaime Maussan's presser yesterday. It was a bit of a disaster presser, okay? There was some technical difficulties. Jaime had to start all over again, but there were some really, really good parts of it. And 2 new beings were shown to the world in Los Angeles. And these are tridactyl beings, meaning they have 3 fingers and 3 toes. It almost gives me half human, half dinosaur, meaning half reptile type being. And I've always said this, maybe Satan is trying to build his own army. And maybe that's why we see all these different beings. We just don't have the answers. We just don't know what those answers are. But it makes for great conversation. So again, I appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. Before we get up out of here, allow me to pay a few bills if you don't mind. Shout out to the LeakYou community. Please join us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Amazon Music.
Please hit the like. Thank you.
And I would appreciate it if you would hit that like. Also, if you could, please visit my Anchor page, anchor.fm/LeakYou, where you can find my official podcast. I am on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and Google Podcasts. So you can definitely use Anchor to launch off. And I have quite a lot of content there that is exclusive only to my official podcast platforms that you will not find on other platforms that I broadcast to, including YouTube. Anyway, guys, again, a shout out to everyone who came through. I appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, guys. Until next time.
The judgment sentence that you are an asshole. The trial is over. Thank you, everybody.
Let's play a game. You have 10 seconds to take all your stuff and get out of my life. 10, 9, 8.
God bless you, motherfucker.
You're really smart. Like really, really, really smart like I am.